Hi, this is Lisa Benson from Benson's Boas. There is no shortcut to raising up healthy boas. Good husbandry and proper feeding is the cornerstone to any program. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my feeding program, how I raise up boas to become healthy adults. And this is Harlow, my only morph boa, and I have him out just to start with. But he is an example of what I'd call a healthy young adult boa. He is a good weight, and he is muscular and strong, not obese, and just a strong, healthy, in good physical condition. You can see the muscles, and this is what I strive for in a young adult boa. So I'm going to talk about how I get boas to this point, and let's dive into that. What I'm not going to cover in this video is how to get problem boas started eating, or how to convert a boa from live food to frozen thawed, or how to deal with preparing boas for breeding. I'll cover those topics in separate videos in the future. What I'll talk about in this video is how to start a young boa that you might have just received on food, and how to, bring them along through their adulthood as you raise them up to get a healthy adult boa. Most hobbyists receive a boa that is started on food, and if you're lucky, he's started on frozen thawed prey items. And this is really the best way to receive a boa. It's the easiest way. And we'll start from there. And I hope that if you like this video, you'll like and subscribe to this channel and help support it. So let's go from there. Most of my new arrivals that are very small are going to start on small fuzzy mice. And from there, I would move on to hopper mice, then to small adult, medium, and then large mice. Where I will then jump to is weaned rats, then small rats, medium rats, and then large rats. I tend to skip over any of the what we call milk rats, rats like pup rats or fuzzy rats. I just don't use those. I find they don't. They're pretty fatty. They don't have a lot of nutritional value, and the milk can upset the boa's bellies. So I stick with the adult mice until I have to switch to rats for just nutritional reasons. And we'll talk about how I can tell when that time is. So do I weigh my boas? Yes, I do. I weigh my young boas that are still growing rapidly once a month. And this helps me know when it's time to increase their food. I also will do this, it helps me look at the rate of growth, because I want that growth to be slow and steady. I don't want to see any, massive growth rates. That can be dangerous for the boa. Boas that grow too rapidly are really being set up to die at an early age. And, I've seen so many examples of this. So what I'm looking for is a growth rate of about 10% per month or less. So that's their 10% of their own body weight per month. And you can actually graph that, or some programs that you might use for husbandry to log will actually show you that body weight gain per month, sometimes as it relates to the size of the feeder item. So that's really useful to look at. You just don't want to see massive gains, especially for young boas. I mean, any boa, you don't want to see a massive gain. So I look for something less than or around 10% per month. If they don't gain for a month, I don't get worried. I look for something over a couple month period. So if they're not gaining for 2 months, maybe it's time to increase that prey item size. And what I look to feed in terms of the initial prey size is I look at that 10 to 15% of the boa's body weight. So for example, if I had a 100-gram boa, I would look at a prey item that's between 10 and 15 grams. And if the boa is a BCC, or like a true red tail, or a BCA, like a boa constrictor amarylli, I might go more towards the conservative side of that, so the 10%. And that's because those boas tend to be more digestively sensitive. They're more prone to regurg. So I will feed them more on the conservative side, and I will stick to the 10% range on that side. And for, these small boas, I realize that they don't have a rapid digestion cycle, so I don't feed more than a frequency ever of 7 days. When you do that, you just get into trouble. You're really asking for regurg. So most of my very young boas that are really small are going to be fed about on a 10-day interval. And I know that it's time to increase the prey item size when I look at that weight gain over time and I see that they are stopping that slow, steady gain. I also look at their body condition and I see, that usually in a 2-month period, you won't see a major change, but I'm looking at that weight curve and I see that it's slowing down or it's flat. And at that point, I can move to the next size prey item. Now, at some point, I'm going to decide to decrease the frequency of feeding. In the next, interval of frequency that I'll go to is from 10 days to 2 weeks or 14 days. And I'll do that when I get to usually a size of adult mouse, and when the boa is digesting well and is showing me that they can handle an adult mouse in terms of their percent body weight. When I look at the body weight and the size of an adult mouse, and that is within the range in terms of the 10 to 15%. And the next interval I will go up to when they're ready is the weaned rat. So all of that is based on, again, the size of the boa and the rate at which they are gaining weight. And at that point, I'll go up to 21 days when they're showing me that they're ready for that. But at all times, I'm looking at the physicality of the boa. I want to see that they don't have deep creases in their back. I don't want to see that because that's an indication of excessive weight. I'm looking at their tail section. I don't want to see, a really thick tail. I don't want to see any rolls of fat down here. I want to see definition in muscle on the sides, like I see with this guy. He's clearly muscular, and that's, you see the ridges of muscle there. That's what you want to see. Boas should be rectangular generally. There's some exceptions, like Epicrates sancrea, rainbow boas. They're going to look more, they have a ridged back. They have a prominent vertebrae. And longicauda, for example, or boa constrictor occidentalis, the Argentine boa, they are more elongated and more tubular in shape. So they're normally not rectangular, and you're not going to get them rectangular. So don't try. But those boas are, you're going to look for not blown out bellies. You don't want to see a big, fat belly. You want to see a nice muscular boa that feels strong in your hands, that, is showing not rolls of fat. And just, you should be able to tell that by looking, but you can also chart that weight. Sometimes, you can use like an Excel spreadsheet or an equivalent to look at the weight gain over time. I've done that before, but a lot of times you can just eyeball it and see that your boa looks healthy. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is how do I prepare my feeder items. That's something that people like to know, and I'm going to put Harlow away and bring out another guy. So this is a true red-tailed boa. He's a pokey ground Suriname, and he is, he is a little over 2 years old now. And he's an example of a boa that is growing up nicely, nice and slowly. And you can see, look at his body shape. He's very rectangular, very muscular. You can see he has no excess fat on him, but he also doesn't look at all, wasted or slim. He's just right for his age and growing nicely and evenly. He's very strong, very, very muscular. And this is the type of boa I'm talking about where you do not want to push these guys in terms of growth. Red-tailed boas are sensitive. They definitely do not want to push them. And even though, this boa in particular, I've never had any trouble with regurg from him, but I don't want to get into trouble either. So I've always been cautious with all my red tails. And this guy, I'm looking forward to him having a nice long life here. So I'm always careful with them and always treating them, with an abundance of caution. But yeah, he's doing great. So he should be a nice rectangular shape and show all the muscle for a young boa. And yes, I'm very happy with his condition. So he's still eating mice at this point. I think he is on medium mice still, or he may have just moved to large mice. And I'm going very slowly with him because once again, I don't want to rush it. So he's on the small end of the curve as far as the 10% to 15%. Because he is a BCC, I'm not going to push it. So I keep him at the 10% side of the curve. And how do I prepare my prey items now? Let's talk about that. So what I do is the night before, I've created my list of, who is eating. And I to make it easier, because I have a fair amount of boas here, to make it easy, I've divided up my feeding days into the 10-day group, the 2-week group, and the 3-week group. I also have a month group, which are my breeding animals. But what I do is I feed them on different days. And so on the night before, I pull out of the freezer the prey items that I'm needing to feed, and I put them into individual baggies. So I sort out, like for example, I put all the medium rats into one bag. I put all the, for example, large mice into another bag, and I put them into my refrigerator. And I have separate refrigerator and freezer in here for my prey items. And then I will defrost them overnight. And the next day, prior to feeding, about an hour prior to feeding, and I always feed in the evenings. It's a routine that my snakes are used to, and I think it helps in terms of them having a routine. It seems to be their natural time to eat, which is helpful. And it also helps for them to know that it is eating time and I don't handle them at that time. So it minimizes the food bites that I might get if I handle them during the day. They're less likely to think it's food because I don't feed them during the day. So again, I take those prey items out of the refrigerator now that they've thawed for overnight. And I'm going to soak them in some hot water in a Tupperware container in their plastic bags. And I bring them up to temperature slowly. So I replace that hot water every 10 minutes for 2 or 3 times. And once I've got them up to temperature, it's now time to feed. And that's kind of how I do it. Now, in terms of the freezer, I make sure I've got a chest freezer, and that's really the best type. You want to make sure you rotate the items in your freezer so the ones at the bottom don't stay too long. You want to make sure your feed items are fresh, that they don't stay in your freezer more than about 6 months. And you want to make sure that your freezer is staying cold. So it's always good to have something monitoring the temperature in there. And you want to make sure you're getting your your prey items from a reputable source that's, got good quality feeders that are nicely packaged. Once you open a package of feeders, you want to keep it as airtight as possible because, you don't want to get freezer burn. That just will ruin the quality of the feeder over time. So those are things that I can think of that will help you feeding your boas. And if there's anything else you can think of, I'm glad to answer any questions you might have. I do use NutriBac on BCC and BCA. I dust the prey items with NutriBac because I think it does help their digestive systems. I don't do it if they've never had a regurg, but I sometimes do it proactively for those types of boas because I do think they're a little more sensitive. And anyway, this is Lisa Benson, Benson's Boas. If you like this channel, please like and subscribe. Helps me produce more content and keeps me motivated. Talk to you soon. Bye.